Hello everyone, this is Manoj Pathak. Welcome to the Interlinkages program. Today we are going to look at a question that is written on the board, and I'll try and explain how you can use some of the thinkers, theorists that are to be utilized in this question. Many a times students get confused whether we can write the thinkers, the models that you have read with your course. ठीक है, बहुत सारे लोग ये समझते हैं कि हर क्वेश्चन में थिंकर थ्योरिस्ट नहीं होते हैं. ठीक है, 100% में नहीं हो सकते हैं, बट इफ इट इज ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी you have to understand that there were thinkers, there were models which can be utilized to give some backup to the argument that you are going to put forward. आप जो भी क्वेश्चन लिखने वाले हैं, whatever question you are going to write, you already have read a thinker in your syllabus only who can fit in, and you can come up with a beautiful statement which shows that you are not only aware of the contemporary things, not only aware of the static things, but you are also aware of some of the things which can be related from today and the past. ठीक है, पहले जो बातें बोली गई हैं, पहले जो चीजें की गई हैं, many a times the thinkers were very clear that at certain point in time some changes will happen, and even if not directly, indirectly they had visualized this time in which we are living. Plus आंसर लिखने में बहुत ज्यादा फोकस होता है बच्चों का कि हम जितना आता है उतना लिख दें. This is not something which is going to fetch you a lot of marks. The organization is also important. So this program is called as interlinkages, where we not only learn the basics, where we not only focus on some of the diagrams, where we not only focus on simply the thinkers, we try to create a structure which has all the elements that you have covered during the course of your preparation. आपका आंसर एक ऐसा रिफ्लेक्शन होता है जिससे आप एग्जामिनर को बताते हैं कि आपने कितनी मेहनत की है. Okay, lot of people are doing hard work, but not everybody is scoring well. The reason is the only way you communicate with the examiner is your answer. सिर्फ आपका आंसर ही ये बताता है कि आपने कितनी मेहनत की है. And if you are leaving any stone unturned, it can cost you an ear. It can cost you the most coveted job of the country, that is IAS. So today in my session, I'll take care of each and every element that happens to be the interlinkages. Of course, the course is all about it. We'll also take care of the presentation, how to go about it. आपका structure कैसा होना चाहिए, how to present the things in a manner which makes it clear, visible. आपका आंसर visible हो. It has to be easy to read. It has to be clearly showing that you are explaining everything in a lucid manner, so that the examiner can admire your answer and he can give you good marks. Okay, so let us come to this question. If we read the statement, it says that discuss the trends of migration in the recent times. Now you see, this is a very broad question. So what you are gonna do if it is asked for, let's say 15 or 20 marks? ये बहुत ही broad question है. Why it is broad? Because it is asking you to discuss the thing. Okay, discuss that to trends. It is broad term, trend. क्या क्या हो रहा है, migration कैसे हो रहा है. Okay, now discuss the trends of migration in recent times. अब यहाँ recent की भी बात कर रहा है ये. So when it says recent times, you have to gauge, you have to look at each and every word which is written here. अब recent का मतलब क्या हो सकता है? Let's start with the last term, that is recent. Recent can be, if we look at the geological history of world, so recent can be 1,000 years, 10,000 years. But of course it is talking about migrations since the evolution of the time. So even with the conservative measures, if you'll think of this topic, maybe it will occur to your mind that you have to consider either 50 years or 100 years. But we don't have clear-cut segregation. What exactly is the time frame? Okay, तो आप 50-100 साल ही मान सकते हैं. Now it talks about migration. It doesn't say you are talking about the international migration. यहां हमें पता नहीं चल रहा है whether this is international migration or internal migration. Okay, or internal migration. Again, this is making the question a very broad one, because it is not limited to only one of these things. Very small question when you look at it, but it has many elements जो यहाँ आपको देखने हैं. Plus it is talking about the trends कैसे हो रहा है, how it is happening. Okay, and you don't have to simply put it like you write in a what type of question. Here you have to give a discussion as well कि why such trend is there. So basically this question wants you to take care of the trends of migration in recent times, that includes the international migration and the internal migration. Okay, so now we'll be looking at how to deal with it. This is a broad question. अब आपको पता है कि काफी broad question है, तो हमारा introduction कैसा हो सकता है. If we talk about the introduction or the points that you have to gauge, जो कि ये trend है ऐसा दिखा दें, that can show that. Okay, so if we talk about the introduction for this question, it can be anything. Okay, the one rule of introduction is that it has to be very simple, plus it must give an idea of where you'll be focusing in the question. Okay, so the question trends of migration in recent times, so it can be a number. Let's say that if you are aware that there were 272 million people who migrated even during these recent times, ठीक है, so you can start with some fact, or maybe there is some report, you can start with that as well, which gives a view that migration is a natural phenomena that is happening. Plus maybe along with it you can introduce some thinker which helps you to explain कि why this migration actually happens. ठीक है, trends को हम बताने वाले हैं, but there were people कि why such thing is happening, and one of the finest men who talked about this thing was Lee. Okay, तो आप Lee का use कर सकते हैं. He says that there are some of the factors which can be considered as push factors, some of the factors which can be considered as pull factors, and all together these make a meaning out of what we call as migration. ठीक है, so like I said, one fact that you know maybe. Okay, so you can write a very simple statement like the international migration or national migration, whatever fact you have, that migration is a very natural phenomena that is seen still today, and as Lee suggested, various push and pull factors are the reasons behind this phenomena. Okay, तो एक सिंपल सा स्टेटमेंट आपने लिखा जहां आपने बता दिया कि क्या होने वाला है. Now we don't have much scope because the demand of the question is very very huge. आपको बहुत सारी चीजें बतानी है. So instead of investing any more words on introduction, okay, it has to be limited. The introduction has to be limited around 15-20 words. इसके अलावा हम ज़्यादा words नहीं देंगे because you have to talk about lot of things. So maybe we'll write a connecting statement directly addressing the question, and you can say that the various trends which are visible in the world with respect to migration are as follows. We'll directly jump to the question and will come up with some of the trends which can fit in both internal migration and international migration. हम कुछ ऐसे ट्रेंड्स को लेंगे जो दोनों में फिट हो जाए, जिससे हम ये बता पाएं कि माइग्रेशन जो है कुछ ट्रेंड्स को ओवरऑल फॉलो कर रहा है, वो इंटरनेशनल हो या इंटरनल हो. ओके, सो वन ऑफ द पॉइंट्स इफ यू टॉक अबाउट, हम ये जानते हैं, इफ यू हैव टू टॉक अबाउट some of the destinations are favorite. Some of the destinations are favorite. Okay, some of the destinations are favorite. If you look at the people who are migrating, okay, you'll see that they tend to move to specific places. वो कुछ जगहों पे ही जाना पसंद करते हैं. ठीक है, if we talk about some of the people from India, if we consider the state of Punjab, they want to go to Canada. If you consider Kerala, most of the people are migrating to some of the Arabian countries. If we talk about international migration. Okay, then also you'll see that some of the destinations are very favorite. People from China are going to US. Okay, they want to go to US. तो ये जो ट्रेंड्स हैं ये बहुत ज्यादा विजिबल हैं. तो ट्रेंड तो हमें पता है. Okay, some of the destinations are favorite. Now you have to think, have you read something in the theories? ठीक है, आप क्या है कि बहुत सारी इकोनॉमिक्स थ्योरीज पढ़ते हैं, सोशल थ्योरीज पढ़ते हैं. ठीक है, some of them are biological theories as well. So a lot of theories have been there in your syllabus that you have already read. So if you can fit in this concept with that theory, definitely it will show that you have complete understanding of the theory and you understand the contemporary things as well. Okay, so for this matter we can use cumulative causation theory. सब लोग एक फेवरेट डेस्टिनेशन पे क्यों जा रहे हैं? हाउ यू कैन एक्सप्लेन, हाउ यू कैन डिस्कस अबाउट इट, आप इसको कैसे समझा सकते हैं? सम ऑफ द प्लेसेस आर फेवरेट एज सजेस्टेड बाय मेडाल इन क्यूमुलेटिव causation theory. Okay, in the cumulative causation theory, this was given by Medal, and he says that there is a feeling of relative deprivation amongst the people. Okay, so you can talk about this concept of relative deprivation to prove that why some of the places are favorite for the people. ठीक है, तो अगर हम इसमें देखते हैं, so we'll take an example, a very regular example. There is some nurse who is working in Kerala. Let's say this is nurse X. She is working in Kerala along with other nurses, of course, and maybe she is making 20,000 per month. Okay, and she decides to go to Saudi Arabia. And after reaching there, she sends back a remittance of 2 lakh. ठीक है? Now this remittance of 2 lakh is creating what? The thing that Medal said, relative deprivation. All the other nurses who were here, who knew her, okay, other nurses in Kerala, they feel relatively deprived being in Kerala. Why? इन्हें क्यों deprivation feel हो रहा है? Because they were fetching the same amount, that is 20,000 per month, and is still getting the same. But this nurse X who decided to go to Saudi Arabia is now earning 2 lakh rupees. So what happens? There is migration. Okay, and this Saudi Arabia emerges as one of the favorite places for some of the people like nurses who are into the medical profession so that they can earn more. So here relative deprivation is pushing the people into this direction. Okay, so this relative deprivation is doing this thing. Now other trend, if we talk about, we have used the presentation to explain the thing, we have used the thinker, and we have talked about the trend as well. Maybe you can add a simple statement in that, और ऐसे भी दिखा देंगे तो it shows that relative deprivation has pushed the nurses to reach Saudi Arabia. Okay, now the second trend that we have seen, okay, second trend that we know, that the migration happens along established corridors. This migration happens along some established corridors. ठीक है, there are certain corridors, certain path जिससे migration सबसे ज्यादा देखा जाता है. ठीक है, so lot of migration is happening based on this thing. अब अगर हम सोचते हैं कि कॉरिडोर्स से ही जाते हैं, कॉरिडोर्स का मतलब क्या हुआ? दिस कॉरिडोर्स आर कंसिडर्ड एज सम पाथवेज, सम थिंग्स विच आर हेल्पिंग द पीपल टू रीच हियर. ठीक है, अब जैसे अभी मैंने एग्जाम्पल दिया था, ओके, कि हम इंडियंस जैसे यहां देख सकते हैं, ओके, पीपल फ्रॉम पंजाब प्रेफर going to Canada. If you are taking example of the Chinese people, they prefer to go to USA. Okay, so this established corridor thing is the people, okay, the diaspora that is already there. Okay, the diaspora is doing this thing. They behave as the corridors, okay, because some people are there who belong to your own country or your own region, and you think that whenever you reach that place they'll be helping you. ठीक है, तो एक established corridor है, हम उनके पास जाएंगे, वो reference देंगे, हमें नौकरी मिल जाएगी. Okay, some people are already there whom we know and they'll refer us to someone else who will help us to get a job, and then from there we will progress to any other place, maybe to other parts of that region जहां हमें economic फायदा हो सकता है. Okay, so if you talk about this thing, Cohen talked about the very same thing, okay, in his cultures of migration theory. Okay, in his cultures of migration theory, he talks about the very phenomena that you are seeing here. So again, what you have done, you have given a trend that is visible in India, that is visible around the world, plus you have talked about one individual, plus you have given some examples as well. तो आपने एक और ट्रेंड बताया, एक और थिंकर इजीली यहां ऐड हो गए. ओके, नाउ द अदर ट्रेंड, यूनिवर्सल ट्रेंड्स के बारे में ही हम बात कर सकते हैं, बिकॉज दिस इज एन ओपन एंडेड क्वेश्चन, राइट? So if we talk about some other trend, let me talk about one more trend. Any part of the world, if you are looking at, any part of the world, if you are looking at, one thing that you'll see, you'll find is that most of the migration is happening towards urban centers. ठीक है, ये एक और ट्रेंड है. Most of the migration is happening towards urban centers. Okay, and nobody can deny this trend. ये बहुत नॉर्मल सा ट्रेंड है जो आप जानते हैं. If you'll consider this for last 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, recent time का ही है, आज भी हो रहा है. ठीक है, आज भी यही ट्रेंड है. So most of the migration is happening towards urban centers, and if you are going to explain this thing, आप कुछ डेटा जो अभी आया उसको लेके भी कर सकते हैं. Okay, and this is something you can take some of the examples from India, maybe from world. ठीक है, इंडिया से भी लोग जाना चाहते हैं तो सिलिकॉन वैली, न्यूयॉर्क, लास वेगस, यही सोचते हैं. कनाडा जाना है तब भी हम क्या है कि किसी न किसी बड़े सेंटर पे ही जाना चाहते हैं. Okay, so if we talk about this thing here, this thing was very clearly explained by one individual who is Zelensky. Okay, you read about Zelensky's theory of migration. Okay, and in his theory of migration, what he suggests that any of the countries which are in demographic transition 2 or 3, okay, the stage of demographic transition, okay, the stage of demographic transition 2 and 3, this is clearly visible, and you can easily draw a graph that was given or based on his theory only, right? आप क्या कर सकते हैं, आप इस ग्राफ में शो कर सकते हैं. नाउ यू हैव एन अपॉर्चुनिटी टू प्रेजेंट योर स्किल्स. ठीक है, आप अपने स्किल को दिखा सकते हैं यहां पे. यूल टॉक अबाउट द माइग्रेशन एंड द डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन की अगर हम बात करें तो इट टॉक्स अबाउट प्री इंडस्ट्रियल टू पोस्ट इंडस्ट्रियल phases. Okay, so maybe we'll represent this, एंड इन दिस थिंग द फर्स्ट रूरल टू रूरल माइग्रेशन इनिशियली यही हो रहा होता है, ओके, बट दिस इज नॉट ऑफ आर इंटरेस्ट, इट इज स्टेज 1. शुरू में आपका क्या है, डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन के स्टेज 1 में यही हो रहा होता है. देन यूड सी दैट रूरल अर्बन स्टार्ट्स, ओके, एंड इट इज समथिंग विच even dominates for a long period of time. This is happening in the second and third stage. Maybe if you want, you can definitely show some of the trends like इसके बाद क्या होता है, इंटर अर्बन होता है, okay, and now you have shown that you understand Zelensky theory, you understand demographic theory, demographic transition theory, and based on that you can clearly see this trend. ठीक है, ये आज भी हो रहा है, you can connect to something which was given in the past as well. तो ये trends continue हो रहे हैं, इसको हम दिखा रहे हैं. ठीक है, and you can also talk about the last phase like urban to rural, but if you want you can show only these three and you are done. But यहाँ क्या करेंगे, हम clearly example भी present करेंगे, okay, some of the trends. If we talk about in national level, Bihar, UP, still people are moving to Delhi, Mumbai, okay, and they are often considered as having some of the characteristic which is visible in demographic transition theory second and third stage. So of course they are in third stage, so you can talk about these. अब क्या है कि third stage, most of the developing countries, you can take example of any developing country and you can give an example. People from Bangladesh, Pakistan, they aspire to go to US, okay, Bangladesh, Pakistan, to London for education, they want to go to New York, okay. So this is not something which is limited only to India. So the trend is visible, ठीक है, ये trend है. Plus you have shown that you have a very good understanding about two more theories, और ये इतना easily आप कर सकते हैं only if you have figured out कि ऐसा लिख सकते हैं हम. ठीक है, when we write the questions and we keep thinking on this direction, then you'll see that even within 30-40 days, if you are doing it with all your effort, you'll see that you are fetching the rewards. ये easily अपने आप आपसे होने लगेगा. अब recent trends की बात कर सकते हैं. We have shown the trends जो अभी तक हैं, आज भी हैं. But let's try and reflect something which is certainly a new phenomena, which is more recent but more in number. Okay, so we'll talk about one more phenomena, and that is the forced migration patterns that are visible. Okay, the forced migration or forceful migration. This is forced migration. Leading to refugee crisis. Okay. So this is something that is visible around the world. And again, if time permits, the best way to do is what? World over, you know that a lot of things are happening which is forcing people to leave their countries of origin. ठीक है, उसे छोड़ के लोग क्या कर रहे हैं, बाहर जा रहे हैं. So you can draw a rough sketch so that here you can present some of those examples that are in news. ठीक है, you can talk about some of those examples which are in news and you can represent the various factors as well. आप सारे factors को भी दिखा सकते हैं. You can talk about some of those factors. Okay, so it is always prudent to do this thing. Now you have presented the map of world and with different regions you can talk about different type of crisis that the regions are facing. Okay, for example, if we talk about some of these regions, okay, यहाँ क्या हो रहा है? Here terrorism, civil war is the reason. Okay, if we talk about some of the here Rohingyas, ethnic conflict. Similar, you can talk about some of these regions, Somalia, Ethiopia and all. These are because of the ethnic conflict. Okay, you can also come up with some of the examples where you know that disasters happened. Okay, so some recent examples, some of the places that you can choose and you can show that people are moving outside. ठीक है, तो आपने एक अच्छा डायग्राम बनाया. क्राइसिस है. Here you can represent some of the disasters. Economic crisis, लेबनान की बात करें अभी आज की डेट में, that is forcing people. Ethnic wars, civil war like situation in some of the states. Okay, pandemic also forced people to move. You can talk about the movement that happened during the pandemic. ये इंडिया में क्या है कि लोग मेजर सेंटर से अंदर अपने घरों की ओर भागने लगे टुवर्ड्स रूरल एरियाज. सो बेस्ड ऑन द टाइम दैट यू गेट, यू हैव टू राइट एवरीथिंग ओवर द डायग्राम. यहाँ क्या है कि हमें बहुत सारे स्टेटमेंट्स नहीं लिखने हैं. यू विल नॉट हैव दैट मच अपॉर्चुनिटी, आपको इतना मौका ही नहीं रहता है. ठीक है, तो इसके बाद अब ये माइग्रेशन ऑफ द फोर्स्ड माइग्रेशन लीडिंग टू रिफ्यूजी क्राइसिस. फोर्स्ड माइग्रेशन है क्या? Because of any of the reasons, maybe man-made or natural, you are leaving that place. But आप अपनी जगह को छोड़ते हैं. इसके बारे में क्या किसी थिंकर ने कहा था? Okay? Did anybody said about this? Again, the same name, Cohen's culture of migration. Okay? Cohen's culture of migration. This explains all of these very beautifully. ठीक है, अगर इससे बेहतर थ्योरी ही नहीं है इनमें से किसी भी क्राइसिस को एक्सप्लेन करने के लिए. क्यों लोग भाग जाते हैं? वाई पीपल स्टार्ट टू मूव फ्रॉम देयर होम्स? बिकॉज कोहेन्स कल्चर ऑफ माइग्रेशन सजेस्ट दैट कि घर से हाउस होल्ड इनसिक्योरिटीज आर रेस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर माइग्रेशन. हाउस होल्ड इनसिक्योरिटीज, जो चिंता आपको घर पे होती है, ओके, related to the place of origin or destination, related to place of origin or destination, leads to migration. Okay, this was suggested in cultures of migration theory. अब आप पेंडेमिक को देखिए. People were aware that my house is 3,000 kilometers away. It is not easy to move to such a long distance. इतनी दूर जाएंगे कैसे? But the fear that if they stay in Mumbai or in Delhi, probably they are not going to see their family again. ठीक है? The insecurity that at that destination, maybe my family will die or I'll die and will never meet each other. So this insecurity forced people to walk. पैदल चलने लगे लोग. ओके, नाउ सम ऑफ दोज एरियाज वेयर सिविल वॉर इज हैपनिंग, एथनिक क्लिंजिंग इज हैपनिंग, दीज पीपल फियर फॉर देयर ओन लाइफ्स, द लाइफ्स ऑफ द फैमिली. ठीक है, अभी जम्मू में जो चल रहा है, ठीक है, आज ही आप देखिए, सम ऑफ द किलिंग्स इज हैपनिंग एंड कश्मीर वैली. अगेन द नेक्स्ट एक्सोडस, कश्मीरी पंडित्स और द Pandits again fleeing the valley. तो ये सबसे अच्छी तरह से जो भी ऐसी चीजें हो रही हैं, ओके, why these people are fleeing that place? Because they know that even if they are willing to live with their own land, ठीक है, they may endanger their families. It is not only about an individual. The insecurity that the family is holding. Okay, so if you'll talk about Cohen while explaining some of the things that you are seeing, you'll give an impression that you have a clear-cut understanding about the things not only from the perspective of the context where it is happening, but also from the book that you have already read. ठीक है, तो आप इजिली डायग्राम, थिंकर, हर चीज को आप इंक्लूड कर सकते हैं. ओके, एंड वी हैव टॉक्ड अबाउट सम ऑफ द मेजर ट्रेंड्स that recently are seen. Okay, and if time permits, that I highly doubt. Okay, after writing 4-5 points, we fail to do justice with this thing. But if time permits, maybe you can talk about the interstate migration or any of the points that you think is right, but not more than 5 points. ठीक है, 5 से ज्यादा लिखने में आपको दिक्कत होगी, because we have limited time and limited space. So maybe you can talk about some of the regular trends that you are seeing, interstate migration related trends. Okay, marriages still hold their ground, so maybe you can talk about how Ravenstein explained some of these. Okay, so that is a regular choice जो हर बच्चा लिख रहा होगा, आपके अलावा भी सारे लिख रहे होंगे. ठीक है, even any of the people who are writing about migration will definitely talk about these points. तो ये regular वाले point यहाँ पे देंगे, and then you know that there are lot of trends that cannot be explained within the limits. Okay, so maybe we'll put a point other trends that are visible. Okay, we'll talk about other trends. You can come up with some of the points that you have observed, as many as you can. Okay, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, any recent report that you have read that talks about it. So maybe one word, or if it is not sufficient, few words, but not statements. We don't have time for statements anymore. Already you have discussed the thing. You have talked about some of the major trends. 5 आप बता ही चुके हैं. ठीक है, now it is time that you conclude your answer. Okay, because they wanted you to discuss the trends of migration in the recent times. You have done it. Okay, now maybe we are seeing that this migration is also reason for some of the bad things that are happening. So in conclusion, you can write about that as well if you want, that looking at the trends, the migration is more and more, but there are a lot of checks being placed, as there is lot of problems that are happening. For example, educational crisis that happened in Bangladesh, or you can talk about lone wolf attacks that are happening in some of the host countries. ठीक है, जहां ये लोग जा रहे हैं वहां दिक्कतें आ रही हैं, प्रॉब्लम्स आ रहे हैं. So you can talk about some of the problems that these host countries are facing. Okay, and again, if time permits and if you can recall that there is Berry's acculturation theory. Okay, so in conclusion, maybe you can talk about Berry's acculturation theory. Okay, which will definitely change the course of migration. अभी जो ट्रेंड है वो तो आपने बताया है, ठीक है, बट दिस रिजेक्शन ऑफ द होस्ट कंट्री is creating lot of problems for the local people as well as for the people who are reaching some of the places. अब वो अपने को भी एडमायर नहीं करते हैं, होस्ट कंट्री को भी एडमायर नहीं करते हैं, एंड फाइनली बिकॉज ऑफ दिस थिंग वी हैव सम ऑफ द problems. Lone wolf attacks have increased, some sleeper cells, okay, are active. You can talk about internal security and all. Okay, so all such things happening, what is going to be the result? The migration policies are definitely going to change in the near future. ठीक है, so you can talk about the migration policies are going to change in the near future and we'll see new trends. तो आपने एक futuristic statement भी दे दिया, and if somebody is writing in this way, you can understand that you have written a good introduction, you have given some of the trends, you have talked about thinkers, you have given the right presentation at the right places, you have utilized the space very well. Okay, and now your answer is visible as well. यहाँ क्या है, बहुत मेहनत नहीं करनी है. Anybody who is checking your paper will find it easy to reward you. Why? because यहाँ क्या है, आपने रीजंस भी लिखे हैं, इथनिक कॉन्फ्लिक्ट, डिजास्टर, civil war and everything you have represented over the diagram. So your diagrams, your presentation, the flow of the answer pretty much depicts that you have a very good understanding of whatever you have covered. So it is not bookish knowledge that you are presenting, but you are also reflecting some of the understanding that you have developed over time to learn this thing. Okay, and so lot more things are there to interlinkages. It is not only limited to the thing that we have done, but we had paucity of time. So I welcome you all to join me in this interlinkages program so that I can teach you within maybe 50-60 hours how to deal with most of the questions that you are going to face in exam. Okay, so everybody who is looking to breach the 300 marks, okay, if you are willing to score more than 300 marks, I invite you to join me in my course of interlinkages. That will certainly help you to reach there. Maybe you'll get more than that. Okay, so we are targeting 300 plus. So I welcome everybody to join me with the course. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you very much.